Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 192, The Stolen Stones. The episode begins with Ash and the gang continuing their quest to Olivine City now that they were done their little side quest with Todd and his Articuno picture. They were currently walking through a large rocky canyon. It was very narrow as well, so if any of these rocks in the canyon fell on Ash and the gang, it could be disastrous. Unfortunately, it seemed as though some of these rocks in the canyon were going to fall on Ash and the gang, as they spotted that there were some unstable ones by the canyon's edges. Knowing that they could come tumbling down at any second and crush them, Ash and the gang begin running as fast as they can to get out of the canyon. However, before they can, a large gust of wind then picks up, blowing the rocks down towards them in the form of a rock slide. Ash and the gang thought they were going to fucking die, but in a Deus Ex Machina moment, two Arcanine and their trainers jumped in and blocked the boulders, saving Ash and the gang as they picked them up on board, and Ash and the gang rode to safety. Ash and the gang instantly thanked the two trainers, who revealed themselves as a pair of siblings named Ramona and Keegan, with Ramona being the older sister and Keegan being the younger brother. Ash and the gang then introduced themselves, with Brock instantly falling in love with Ramona, as you would expect, as he proceeds to simp for her, leading Misty to drag him off. Extremely annoyed by Brock's comment that Ramona could command him like a puppy, just like her Arcanine. When Brock mentions the Arcanine, Ash examines them in utter amazement, as he has never seen an Arcanine up close before. He proceeds to use his Pokedex on it to find out some information, which informs him that Arcanine was known as the legendary Pokemon, even though it wasn't actually legendary, and it was known for being loyal and brave, and evolved with a Firestone. Knowing that Firestones were rare, Ash asks Keegan how he managed to get a Firestone to evolve his Growlithe. Keegan brags that it was extremely easy to acquire a Firestone, as he then pulls out an entire collection of them. Ash is extremely surprised, and questions how Keegan was able to get a hold of all of these, with Keegan revealing that he was joking before, and that none of these Firestones were actually his. They were actually meant to be sent to a town for a contest for Fire-type Pokemon, and he and his sister just had the stones currently because they were in charge of delivering them to the town. Ramona then clarifies that her and Keegan were delivering the stones because they operated a courier service where they delivered goods from the local area to villages and cities nearby, using their Arcanine as transport. Ash and the gang comment on how exciting a job where you got to ride Arcanine around all day must be, wishing that they could ride Arcanine as well, which leads Ramona to question where Ash and the gang were going. When they reveal that they were on their way to Olivine City, Ramona clarifies that the town that they needed to get to was in the same direction, so they would take Ash and the gang with them and let them ride their Arcanine along the way. Ash and the gang happily agree as they hop on the Arcanine with Ramona and Keegan direct their Arcanine through some very rough terrain, leading Ash and Misty to state how impressed they were that the Arcanine were able to make their way through terrain like that. They asked Brock for his opinion. However, he was too busy panicking and holding on for dear life, as the terrain was really rough and the Arcanine had sped up. They had sped up because they were in a mood for a break and had spotted a nearby forest clearing. Ramona and Keegan agreed to let the Arcanine take a little break there, as Ash and the gang hop off and Misty and Brock enjoy some drinks. Ramona and Keegan take the time to comb their Arcanine's fur to help them relax. Ash then comes up and says that he wants to help as well, leading Keegan to hand him a brush, and he does so. It seems Ash wasn't satisfied with just brushing the Arcanine though, as he had such a good time riding Arcanine that he wanted to see if he could ride it all on his own. Excited by Ash's interest, Keegan offers to give Ash some lessons on how to ride Arcanine on his own. Ash happily obliges, thinking it would be a piece of cake. However, as soon as the Arcanine begins running, Ash screams in fear, practically frozen and unable to do anything to stop the Arcanine from running into a boulder. Keegan then instructs Ash to turn Arcanine to the left so he can dodge the boulder, which snaps Ash out of his panic, and he's able to do so. He then almost runs into a few more boulders, but Ash eventually gets the hang of telling the Arcanine to move in certain directions so it can avoid them. Misty and Brock happily remark that Ash was actually pretty good at riding for a beginner. Sure, he almost messed up at the start there, but he was already getting the hang of it. Misty and Brock immediately change their opinion though when they spot Ash heading for a pool of water, and he once again becomes too nervous to do anything, leading Keegan to take charge and command the Arcanine to jump over the pond. Ash wasn't expecting this, so when Arcanine was in the air, Ash falls down to the ground, landing straight on his face, leading Brock and Misty to clarify that Ash was actually a below-average Arcanine rider. But come on, man, he failed once, it's fine. Ash didn't let Misty and Brock's comments get to him, as he stated that even though he failed, all he needed was more practice, and he would be as good as Keegan was at commanding the Arcanine. Ash's declaration is then interrupted by a sudden noise. This noise was revealed to be a huge rocket, which was heading right for Ash and the gang, so everyone separated, running away from the rocket. When it suddenly lands, thankfully just missing everyone, and a rubber hand pops out of it and steals the Firestones that were in a huge bag. As everyone questions who would be after Firestones, Team Rocket then reveal themselves from inside the rocket and do their motto, stating their plan to capture both the Firestones and Pikachu. In an attempt to get the Firestones back, Ash commands Pikachu to use Thunderbolt on Team Rocket, but Meowth replies by launching the same hand that grabbed the Firestones and using it to capture Pikachu as well, meaning that Pikachu couldn't use his Thunderbolt because the hand was made out of rubber. Thankfully, Pikachu wasn't captured for long, as Ramona then stepped in and commanded one of the Arcanine to free Pikachu by tackling the arm, which it did. As Pikachu flew into Ash's arms, due to the impact of the tackle, Keegan then instructed the Arcanine to attack Team Rocket with Fire Spin in an attempt to get the Firestones back. However, the Arcanine were too wild and missed Team Rocket, allowing them to make their escape back into their rocket, where they grabbed some bicycles and drove off. Ramona and Keegan gave chase with their Arcanine, who were running extremely fast as they had been commanded to use extreme speed. Even as Ramona and Keegan catch up though, Team Rocket doesn't panic whatsoever, as they merely stop in the middle of the road. despite the Arcanine very quickly approaching, getting ready to surround Team Rocket. However, when the Arcanine see Team Rocket stop, they try to stop as well, but they were going too fast and had too much momentum, so they couldn't stop and end up falling into Team Rocket's pitfall trap. Yes, that's right, that's why Team Rocket stopped. Team Rocket congratulate themselves on the trick they just pulled of getting the Arcanine to stop so they would fall into the hole, and proceed to pedal away, with the Arcanine no longer able to trail them as they were stuck. Thankfully, though, Ash and the gang had tried their best to follow the Arcanine, and although it took them a while, they eventually caught up to the pitfall trap and helped the Arcanine, as well as Ramona and Keegan, out. Keegan and Ramona instantly went to go follow Team Rocket when they realized that they didn't know what direction they had went in. So this leads Brock to send out his Golbat, and he has him use Supersonic to try and find Team Rocket's location, and sure enough, he's able to find their footprints, since its rays could detect nearby humans. Unfortunately, though, the footprints were found at a fork in the road, and the footprints went in 3 different directions, indicating that Team Rocket had split up. So Ash and the gang decided to split up as well, so they can counter each of the members of Team Rocket individually. They didn't think it was a good idea to split up, but they knew that they had to if they wanted to have the best chance of finding the Firestones. The groups were officially decided to be Ramona, Misty, and Brock, and Ash and Keegan, respectively. Along with an Arcanine per group, of course. Misty, Brock, and Ramona are the first ones to spot what looks to be the bag of Firestones on a tree stump as they were riding through the forest on Arcanine. They immediately go up to this bag. However, before they can reach it, they fall into yet another pitfall trap that was dug by James, who reveals himself on a unicycle, I might add, as he taunts Brock, Misty, and Ramona, stating he purposely dug the hole a little deeper than usual. James then makes his exit, leaving Brock, Misty, and Ramona inside the hole. Meanwhile, as for how Ash and Keegan and one of the Arcanine were doing in their group, they had actually managed to locate Jessie, who proceeded to try and escape them, riding on her unicycle as well. Ash and Keegan follow, as Jessie seemingly aimlessly just keeps driving and driving and driving through bushes until she arrives on a Pokémon battlefield, just as she planned, as she states that if Ash and Keegan truly wanted the Firestones back, then they would have to beat her in a battle. Keegan declares to Jessie that she had no right to demand a battle for the Firestones because she didn't even own them to begin with, adding that he also shouldn't have to battle her because he wasn't getting the Firestones for himself as a reward, he was simply trying to get the Firestones back so he could deliver it to a town. Essentially, he stated that since the Firestones were going to a town anyways, neither him or Jessie would get really anything out of this battle. However, Jessie didn't care about this, and she didn't call off the battle, instead starting it by sending out her Arbok, leading Ash to accept Jessie's challenge, assuring Keegan that he would win because he always beat Jessie, as he sends out his Pikachu. Arbok makes the first move by using Poison Sting, but Pikachu dodges by using Agility. Arbok then tries an Acid, but Pikachu simply just uses Agility again, and then Arbok tries to wrap Pikachu, but Pikachu dodges out of the way, using Agility to run. So, moral of the story, Agility was overpowered as fuck against Arbok in this case. Ash then finally does an attack of his own, commanding Pikachu to use Thunderbolt, which knocks Arbok out, winning Ash the battle. Surprisingly, Jessie actually admits to her defeat, and claims that Ash battled really well, and throws the bag in the middle of the battlefield, telling Ash to go grab it. Ash was surprised at Jessie's willingness to accept defeat for once, but he wasn't complaining, he just wanted to grab the Firestones, so him, Keegan, and Arcanine ran to the middle of the battlefield to grab them, only to fall into another pitfall trap before they could reach it, that Jessie had dug in advance. Yes, that's right, she purposely planned to trap Ash in a pitfall in advance in case she lost. Despite the pitfall traps usually never causing any long-term damage, this pitfall trap was so deep that Keegan falling into it caused him to break his arm. Ash tries to comfort Keegan in his pain, asking if he was alright, but while he was doing this left him distracted, allowing Jessie to grab Pikachu from the hole using the hand from the rocket. Jessie then puts Pikachu in an electric-proof cage and drives off on her unicycle, with Arbok still behind her, as it had woken up by this point. To make matters worse, as Ash and Keegan were in the hole, they realized that the bag had dropped down with them. They initially got excited because, maybe they at least had the Firestones now, and Jessie was gone, but they discovered that the bag was a fake, and instead just had a whole bunch of real stones as opposed to Firestones. Another trick played by Jessie. Ash was driven insane with anger due to Jessie's tricks, and he tried to use the energy from his anger to climb out of the hole. Unfortunately, all he does is fall down and displace a rock from the wall of the hole, sending it flying down on him, leaving him both hurt and dizzy, and still stuck in the goddamn hole with an injured Keegan. Meanwhile, as for what Meowth was doing, well, he was the Team Rocket member who was actually put in charge of the real Firestones, so he was currently by himself examining them, and was disappointed to find out that despite them being called Firestones, they weren't even hot. Jessie and James then showed up, and Team Rocket was now reunited, as Jessie and James explained that their divide and conquer plan had worked, as Ash, Keegan, Ramona, Brock, and Misty were all now trapped in hole traps. Meowth was very pleased with Jessie and James actually managing to defeat Ash and the gang for once, and stated that it was now time for the next phase of their plan, which they never seemed to get to, which was bringing everything they had stolen to Giovanni, that of course including Pikachu and the Firestones, hoping that Team Rocket would finally get a promotion from doing this. Meowth then adds that Team Rocket should make their exit as soon as possible, in case Ash and the gang were to pull off a Deus Ex Machina moment and suddenly show up. Thankfully, Ash and the gang don't, as Team Rocket escape, going to Giovanni to show them what they had found. Meanwhile, back with Ash and Keegan, Ash had managed to use the Arcanine to jump out of the hole, along with Keegan. Even though the sun was setting and it was getting dark, Ash told Keegan that they should probably still try and find Team Rocket, stating that they had probably reunited by this point, now that they had the Firestones and Pikachu. Keegan agreed with the urgency of the situation, stating that the Firestones had to be in the town by tomorrow, as that's when the competition was, where the Firestones would be awarded. Keegan then hopped on Arcanine, with Ash taking the back seat, as Keegan declared that despite his broken arm, he would do his best to ride Arcanine as good as possible. Sadly, after only a few seconds, Keegan's arm pain proved to be too much for him, and he claimed that he could not drive the Arcanine. This led Ash, who wanted another chance to ride Arcanine anyways, to request that he take Keegan's spot in the front seat. Keegan reluctantly agreed, since he didn't have much else of a choice. It was either he kept driving and potentially killed them, or Ash kept driving and potentially killed them, so he had to go with Ash. Sadly, Ash is still a complete Arcanine riding noob, so when he takes charge, he almost crashes into several trees, only narrowly avoiding them due to Keegan's guidance. Keegan then gives Ash some advice, telling him that the only way he was going to be able to ride Arcanine efficiently was if him and Arcanine acted as one cohesive unit, and essentially forming a bond so good that Ash and Arcanine knew what they would say to each other, so they instantly had the same idea of where to go. Keegan mentioning a strong bond makes Ash remember how Pikachu disobeyed him at first, but now they had a bond tighter than anyone else. He tries to repeat this process with Arcanine, comforting it, and telling it that it was doing a really good job and shit, and just being really kind to it, and this makes the Arcanine warm up to him, and they eventually form a pretty solid bond, especially for just talking for like 5 minutes, and now Ash was suddenly able to ride Arcanine better. Yay, I love Deus Ex Machina moments. Eventually, it got even darker, as it was now deep night at this point, and Arcanine then stopped in its tracks and began to sniff around at a clearing on a foothill. Ash didn't scold it to keep going, as due to his new bond with Arcanine, he had faith that Arcanine knew what it was doing, and sure enough, it did, as it managed to find Team Rocket and Pikachu's scent, and proceeded to follow it. Meanwhile, speaking of Team Rocket, despite originally declaring that they were going to head straight for Giovanni, they decided to indulge in a huge victory meal first, immensely proud of themselves for an actual successful plan. As Team Rocket was about to dig into their meal in the middle of the forest, James stopped them, as he was rightfully concerned about the amount of money that they had spent on all the food, since they were already in debt and had no money to begin with. So, he was debating returning the food so that Team Rocket wouldn't go into further debt. However, Meowth and Jessie reminded him that once they sold the Firestones, they'd make plenty of cash, and be able to pay back all their debt and then some, while also being in line for a promotion from Giovanni, so that they could make even more money, since they'll successfully deliver Pikachu to Giovanni. This reassurance from Meowth and Jessie still didn't quell James's worries, as he questioned how they planned to sell the stones for money, with Jessie simply telling him not to worry about that right now, and just focus on the victory dinner. And honestly, James just decided to do as Jessie said at this point, as he was starving, so Team Rocket began digging in to their victory dinner. Meanwhile, back with Misty, Brock, and Ramona, they had managed to make it out of their pitfall trap due to Brock sending out his Onix, and them using Onix essentially as a ladder. As soon as they were free from the hole, Misty heard what she believed was a growl of an Arcanine, and Brock then climbed aboard his Onix with Ramona and Misty, and ordered his Onix to follow the source of the sound, believing it to have come from Keegan's Arcanine. It did in fact turn out to be Keegan's Arcanine that had growled, as Keegan, Ash, and the Arcanine had found Team Rocket by this point, who were extremely tired from overfeeding themselves, and just wanted to go to bed at this point, but due to Ash and Keegan's yelling and demands that the Firestones be returned, they could not fall asleep. Keegan then took action by commanding his Arcanine to attack Team Rocket with Takedown, but Jessie then forcibly pushed her Wobbuffet into the battle, as it used Counter to deflect the takedown. Because of this, Team Rocket was able to take the opportunity to retreat and attempt to fly away in their Meowth balloon, with Pikachu and the Firestone still in hand, determined to escape in their balloon because they knew that Arcanine couldn't fly and catch up to them in there. Just then, though, Brock, Misty, and Ramona show up on Brock's Onix, and Ramona orders her Arcanine to use Fire Spin on Team Rocket, with Team Rocket taunting that there's no way that the Arcanine would be able to reach them, though, unbeknownst to them, Arcanine was a very good climber, and proceeded to climb up the Onix, essentially using him as a ladder to get up to Team Rocket's balloon, and then destroy it with a few Fire Spin attacks, just as it was commanded, sending the balloon plummeting down and Team Rocket falling out. Pikachu's cage and the Firestones also fall out, and thankfully, Brock was able to catch the Firestones, while Ash was able to catch Pikachu's cage, and then free him. Since Team Rocket was only knocked down and not blasted off though, they did not want to give up, so Jessie then sent out her Arbok to attack, but Arcanine simply defeated it by pushing it with a single takedown, causing it to fall on top of Team Rocket. This Arcanine being Keegan's Arcanine, as opposed to Ramona's. With Arbok down, Team Rocket decided to actually retreat, as they begin running away, trying not to be noticed. However, Keegan does notice them, and tries to run after them, but he wasn't fast enough, so he instead alerts Ash to believing Ash to be faster, and he definitely was, but not because he was naturally faster, but because he decided to hop on Keegan's Arcanine and ride it to chase after Team Rocket. Thanks to Arcanine using extreme speed, Ash was able to get a close enough distance to Team Rocket, and he then commanded his Pikachu to use Thunderbolt, sending Team Rocket blasting off. Filled with regret, as they apologized to each other for not going to Giovanni and getting the promotion before they celebrated. The worst part was, now Team Rocket would be in even more debt, because they wouldn't be able to pay off their victory meal. Damn, sucks to be you, Team Rocket. Anyways, Brock was really amazed with how Ash had actually managed to handle Arcanine, as he hadn't seen him successfully handle it beforehand. Misty, on the other hand, simply just believed it to be beginner's luck. Just then, the sun began to rise, which caused Ramona to remember that today was the day that they absolutely had to get the Firestones to the competition. So, Ramona, Keegan, and Ash and the gang all hop aboard the Arcanine and resume their trek to the town, and thankfully, they make it just in time to give the Firestones to the contest director, who questions why Ramona and Keegan were so late, asking them if they had trouble, with Keegan and Ramona vaguely stating that it was nothing they couldn't handle. After Ramona and Keegan thank Ash and the gang for all their help, Ash and the gang then say goodbye to Ramona and Keegan, as Ramona and Keegan had to go on to their next delivery, even though Ramona would really have liked to stay and chat more. Upon hearing this, Brock goes up to Ramona and flirts with her, stating that if she let him come with her, they could talk for all eternity. This, of course, leads Misty to get pissed off that Brock was even thinking of leaving her and Ash, and she drags him away by the ear, as usual, as Ash and the gang and Keegan and Ramona part ways, with Ash and the gang continuing on their journey to Olivine City.